Good evening. It is Monday, the 22nd of June, 2026, coming up to 8:30 p.m. UK time, coming up to 9:30 p.m. in Spain, where my guest tonight is based. So this is someone who I've only relatively recently connected with. Like a lot of these things, you sort of see each other on Instagram, follow what they're doing, and then eventually did a mix for 45 Day, which was great. Obviously, I'd seen that he does video mixes as well, all 45s, Drink and Donuts, which is similar to Coffee and Donuts, which is one of the shows we've got. But obviously, another 45s head. We got chatting and we discussed about possibly doing an interview. And he told me that he uses music to help his mother with Alzheimer's. And I thought, well, that is a very interesting thing that we need to talk about. So it's something that we'll be talking about later on the show, but that's one of the things that we're going to aim to. But before we go any further, here we go. Ivan, Drink and Donuts.
Hi, Criztoz. Thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure. And also I wanted to thank you what you do for the 45s community, because it's great to have initiatives like these and people pushing in these times.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. And it's great to be able to do something I enjoy and also bring people together to do things and send out silly ideas and say, hey, do a 45-minute mix or do this or do that. And people get involved, which is great. So it's great to have you as part of the community. Great to have you on the show. First time being on the show. So with all guests, the very first time I have them on, I like to find out from a young age who first got them into music. So for you, what sort of age did you get into music and who was it who introduced you to it?
Most people does get into music at home, right? So you listen to your dads and you kind of argue whether what the music he's playing is not the one that you want to hear. But then when you get old enough, you realize that has been all your influence and you start appreciating it. And that's the music you love afterwards. So I would say that. I would say my dad introduced me to music. The music I love to hear when I'm not working is the music that my dad used to play. And of course, all the evolution that came after that. And then DJing, for example, I was introduced by my dad's brother, who was a DJ also back in the days in the 70s and 80s in Spain, which was also a big time. He introduced me to another sort of electronic, like Kraftwerk, Depeche Mode, and all this sort of electronic stuff.
Well, let's just pause there for a second and just go slightly back. So the music that your dad's listening to, obviously you weren't into it necessarily then, but you are now. So what was that? What styles and what format were you listening to it on?
My dad normally was like a rock person, right? So still being my favorite bands, what were his favorite bands and are still. For example, Rolling Stones, Dire Straits, CCR. That's what I normally listen to, when you get some time without not working and so on, because I also work with electronic music. So, but he would listen to jazz, he would listen to soul, funk, gospel, and stuff like that.
So it gave you quite a wide range of styles from a young age. That's obviously influenced you. Now, you said that your uncle then introduced you to DJing. So what age were you when he did that?
Well, I knew he was a DJ and then he was always telling me stories about it. So I've never been to a gig because I was too little before it stopped and everything. But I always had this interest, like I like music and I would like to play around with it. Basically, that was where everything came from. And then at the age of 14, on my birthday, I asked my family to buy a pair of decks and a mixer so I could practice at home. It was also a time where in Spain we have these light clubs where alcohol was not being served, and then you could go from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. It was like 4 hours in clubs where DJs would play. And then as a teenager, you could go, I don't know if that was in UK or not, but I find it quite funny nowadays that you could do that. And that's started working as a PR, and then everything evolved into buying music, collecting records. Back in the days, of course, it was only vinyl DJing, so that's when everything started.
The first decks that you got on the mixer, can you remember what they were? What make?
Absolutely. There was a pair of Akiyamas and a mixer of Akiyama, one of these packs that you buy all in one, like bundle, belt drive, of course. I started playing electronic music, so it was like bit matching with those sort of belt drives was a challenge, but then it was fine. Then I stayed like a couple of years, then I got into the techniques, and then I changed to the entire set
And
up.
obviously, back then, when you're first getting those decks, I assume it wasn't like the internet now where you could just switch it on and watch DJs and learn how to DJ. So, how were you learning how to do that and how to beat match?
I started working as a PR in some of these clubs and bringing friends, and I was kind of doing pretty well as a PR back in those days, not now. I wanted people to come to see this, music and discover music and so on. So I used to bring a lot of friends, and then, I started getting along very well with the DJs and the people from the club, the organizers. So I would stay in the DJ booth and stare at the DJ. Like the DJ would think probably that I'm a psychopath or something, or in front of the DJ booth, like with the head here, like looking at all the movements, all the tricks that they were doing, and so on. And that's how you learn.
So you were watching the DJs at the club and then going home and sort of trying things out that you'd seen?
Yeah.
And that was all we do. You didn't have any sort of, like you said, your uncle was DJ. You didn't have like lessons from him or?
No. He lived like miles away. We couldn't get a chance to learn or teach me anything. No, it was just like looking at how people do. I think same nowadays, but live, not without the screen.
Yeah.
You would look at videos and tutorials. For me, it was like live learning.
Yeah. So obviously you talked about these light clubs where you could play. Is that when you first started doing some DJing yourself?
I did not too much in those times. Maybe I was 15 or 16 with my first gig. And then afterwards I started practicing, and I had a few gigs now and then. A year before I moved because I lived in Brighton, I was going to mention. So with 18, 19, I started doing more gigs in Spain. And then I moved to UK, and then I did also quite a few things over there, and then it evolved into a career into music. I could say that I lived from it, and that's something I'm very happy about it, that I had these years where I could live from gigs and so on. So that's something I'm really thankful.
So you've mentioned Brighton. Obviously, we discussed that I live fairly close to Brighton. It's sort of that way. So what years were you living in Brighton, and what was your experience of the sort of UK music scene at that time?
I arrived in 2006. It was June 2006, and I left in June, I believe, also 2011. So I stayed for 5 years. The scene was great. I was coming from Madrid was pretty big also at that time. I have to say, in Spain, those years, the years before the 2000s and before that, they were amazing. There was like Madrid is like non-sleeping city. It was the diversity what shocked me. The diversity of having. I was going on fishbowl pub to concerts, or the Freestyle Birds by the Brighton Pavilion to listen to Irish music, and then you could go every day of the week. You have different kind of music, live music everywhere, which wouldn't happen in Spain. Spain, the clubbing scene was huge, but it was not as diverse and condensed as it was I guess it's in the entire UK, but I lived in Brighton, so I talk about Brighton. That's what shocked me and amazed me. I was going for 2 months, and I stayed 5 years. So the day I had to take the flight back to Spain, I was laying on Brighton Beach, and it was like calling my parents, like, I'm not going back home. I'm losing the flight. I was like, yeah, fine. So yeah, that was it. It was great. It was amazing scene.
It's a great city. Obviously, it's progressed a lot, and probably that sort of time was the peak. A lot of stuff going on. There's still a lot of stuff going on in Brighton, but maybe not quite so much as that. Are you doing some DJing while you're in Brighton as well?
I did. I did quite a lot of DJing also in London and a few other cities. It was mainly electronic music. I used to play house and techno. We did a lot of gigs in Brighton. We were doing NGO fundraising parties we called Change. Back in the days, the club was called Digital. There was like a smaller room, not the main room, but we were doing like regular sessions there. Then we did another one was called Mimetic on other different venues around Brighton, and we were doing like straight performances. And in London, I played in Vauxhall, played with another gig with Philip Hardnall from Orbital.
Wow,
We're doing that one. Then we played, I think it was The Egg. I don't remember.
The Egg, yes.
Like
Legendary club,
another gig in Reading, also with DJ who was called Rick Maia, who's a Portuguese guy, and my fella Daniel Kio. We did quite a lot of stuff.
And at this stage, are you vinyl or have you moved to digital?
Vinyl, still vinyl at that time. I refused to go into digital with the CDs. All that age where you had the CDJs, but you had to do the CD, put the CD inside, and then there would be scratch and it would jump and it would not read. All that part I skipped. I refused to have the music on CD. I always stick to vinyl, playing the vinyl. It became a time where you could play anywhere. Like either you do digital or like there were no decks or the EQs were not set for decks anymore in the clubs. It was all, EQ for digital. Bringing vinyls, it became more and more difficult. So by the time the USB came in the scene, like not going with the 2 handbags full of vinyls, just going with the headphones and the USBs, it does help. Also, if you have many gigs, it helps a lot.
It's a very different style of DJing, but like you said, obviously you ended up having refused to go digital. You ended up having to go digital because the scene changed. Now, it's interesting that it's now seems to be going the other way now, and obviously there's listening bars opening, there's more record shops, there's things. So obviously vinyl still is a big thing now.
Happily. The only thing is, like, I think it's gone too much into fashion now. The price has doubled because everybody's buying. But apart from that, it's great that vinyl is coming back. I mean, that feeling you don't get with digital. And the people could argue, does vinyl sound better or worse? That's not the debate. Obviously, digital has to sound better in terms of sound quality, like in the scientific way of saying. But the other one has the soul that the digital doesn't have.
It's definitely got something different, the vinyl.
Yeah.
Let's talk about 45s. Obviously, you have a channel called Drink and Donuts, which is obviously a reference to donuts and 45s. So when did you first get into 45s and why do you like them?
I never got into, there was not a point where I got into 45s. I just saw a record. It didn't matter if it was a 45 or LP or maxi, and then I would buy it. But then it's true that for DJing, then you realize that 45s are easier to carry and nicer to collect. And then you get B-sides or, things that you would never get on a long play or a maxi. So it is like 2 different worlds within that vinyl world. But I start collecting, I think, more when I realized that I wanted to DJ something else than electronics, which came with the pandemic, because we'll talk about it later. And that's when I started really getting into the 45s more in depth and leaving aside a little bit the...
So that was around the time of the pandemic?
Yeah, consciously going after 45s.
Well, let's talk about the pandemic. Obviously, it's strange still to talk about it now and think how it was because, we're talking like 6 years ago now.
Yeah.
A lot has happened in that time. But just before the pandemic, what were you doing in terms of music and DJing and things like that?
It was a really busy time for me, DJing. I lived in Brighton till 2011. Then I briefly moved to Belgium, where I did a few gigs and I lived there. I always wanted to learn another language. Then I played in a few reggae parties with 45s. One of my favorite shops is this massive in Camden Town, where I discovered when I was living in Brighton. So every time I go back to UK, I go there. And after that, I moved to China. China, I lived almost 10 years in Shanghai. And then I had residencies in clubs, and basically I played in every corner in Shanghai and 5 days a week, 2 gigs or 3 gigs per night. But the pandemic, it was like starting China. So it was Chinese New Year. I was with my family on holidays in Myanmar, and then that started. Then our flights to go back home, which was Shanghai, were cancelled and the borders were closed. So we thought, let's go visit the family. We could go to Spain for a couple of weeks until all this virus thing finishes, and then we come back to Shanghai, but we never went back. It's a little bit of a crazy story, but life took us here in Malaga in Spain, and that's where we stay after
So the pandemic sort of forced you back home. I mean, is Malaga where you were sort of from originally?
No, I'm from Madrid. Malaga, it was my brother-in-law living here, and he told us, like, you cannot stay with the parents at home, at your parents' home, or my mom's home, and so on. And so I have an apartment that I just moved away, you can use it. And then we thought it was going to be like a couple of weeks, 3 weeks. So we moved back here because it was in February at the time. Madrid is really cold. And we were coming with like flip-flops, like swimwear, no clothes at all. Everything was inside. It was just like summer, really hot, tropical weather. And then arrived in Madrid. It was freezing hot, and we didn't have any clothes. So we moved to Malaga, which was a very nice weather, and that's how everything started. Like we ended up being in that apartment for a year and a half until we found ours. So yeah, everything just happened.
So obviously the gigs have stopped. In terms of music, are you able to create? Do you end up doing streaming? Do you start recording stuff? What are you doing for your creative outlet?
In the pandemic, it was really good for me because I was coming from a time where I had loads of gigs and I wanted to take a break, or I didn't know that I needed a break, but it was the moment for me to take a break. I felt also like playing obviously that often that the music I was playing wouldn't give me anything anymore, excitement. I enjoyed the gigs. I enjoyed most of them. I needed a break and a change of, refresh my mind. I had a lot of synthesizers and little machines. I bought almost the entire collection of the Korg Volcas, the FX things, and then, everything. And I started to make some light music, but electronic still, but composing and doing lives. And then I realized it wouldn't, I wanted to take a break and do something else. And that's when I started to think about drinking donuts, and I wanted to play the music that really meant something for me back in the days. And I thought I could, do a wide range of music with vinyl and play music just for the sake of listening to music, which is something that nowadays is needed because we live too fast. Nobody listens to an album. I mean, nobody. We, the people that are into this, we do take the time to sit down and enjoy listening to an album. But I don't know. I sort of changed my perspective of why I wanted to DJ or play music for people.
Obviously, a different format makes you DJ in a different way, and like you say, listening to the music rather than like quick transitions, or listening to one verse and one chorus of one song and then bump to the next one. So okay, so drinking donuts then. So when did that come about, and what did you do with it?
That came with, that's the evolution of what we were saying. It came just from the need of listening to music, expand the collection and the horizons and the knowledge. Like I went back into, I always remember when, the age where people would borrow you a tape and then you would listen to it, and then they were like, you have to listen to this and you have to listen to that, and I kind of wanted to go back to that feeling. And then, I started to listen to music. Now you do on Spotify, and, you can listen and explore and discover a lot of new stuff, and that's what I wanted to do. And with that, I wanted to show other people, like as when I borrowed you back in the days, that tape, like I thought I could, play music for these moments originally. And still, I think it's music for people when you are either working, designing, cooking. That's what I wanted to do. That's what I still want to do. Of course, if there is something else, is welcome. But that was the main purpose. Because in the pandemic also, we were like doing all these sort of things where we could have a nice music on the background that, you have nothing else to do, just play and listen.
And also one of the things you do, and obviously in the videos, is you've got a rotary mixer.
The rotary.
Yeah,
I wanted to explore the rotary, and I explored it. I think the way I mix, there's thousands of styles, and I respect them all. My choice was to play the songs from the beginning to the end because I want to show people, or I want people listen to the piece, and that's my focus on the way of mixing. You can do small transitions. and I thought like I could put some effects or noises on the change, on the transition from one track to another, but mainly focus on listening to the pieces. That's where everything came from, and that's what I try to do and explore, and that drives you to go and collect more records, and you collect more records and you want to record more, and it becomes a vicious cycle, though sometimes life does not allow you to, or me particularly, to do it that regularly or as regularly as I would like.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in life. It's great to have that as an archive as well, you know, because you have different styles in the different mixes, and it's great to have that as a piece of history that, you know, you've recorded it, these are mixes, and it's there for anyone to go and sort of check out.
All the things that I did very wrong is I never cared about, you know, I was more focused on doing the gigs and enjoy and live the moment and so on. And now I realize I don't have any material from the 27 years I've been DJing. I think that maybe I can count like 40 pictures. But people ask you, do you have any materials or things from the past? Like, sorry, I don't have any. I was DJing.
Exactly, because now everyone has this need, or there's a demand on everyone to like record everything and post about it and put it on social media and show what you're doing and all the rest of it. You know, it's more than just DJing now. You know, if you're a professional,
that's the way the industry works. That's the way you get gigs. Is the way you generate the traction that you need for the people to call you to have a gig. So I understand the industry, but as I said, for me, it was, I mean, even back in the days that didn't exist. So at least I have a bit of excuse just for myself, like, why you don't have any materials? Like, well, it wasn't necessary. I would rather have the way it was, because it was the job. Now you have 3 jobs. But, it's fine. We need to move along.
Exactly. Okay, let's sort of deal with coming out of the pandemic then. So obviously, as the restrictions lifted, obviously you were there in that apartment for like 18 months, I think. So what happened after that? And did you get back into sort of DJing out?
It's been already, and it's a little bit scary saying it, but it's 27 years. And I thought I would take a break because time in China, my 2 kids were born there. And I was starting a company, my own in China, and then DJing, like, as I said, like could be 5 days a week, 2 or 3 days, 2 or 3 gigs every night. And then you get home 6 o'clock in the morning, or a little kid, it's awakening, and then you have to spend time with him and take him to school, and you don't have time to sleep. And I was like really tired.
Yeah.
So the pandemic for me was like a spa, you know, like, in that sense. Like I realized I needed to stop. I realized I needed to focus on different things. After the pandemic, it was like a natural evolution. I just started, but slowly, going back to record stores, collecting records, setting up the studio. I changed it a million times, buying equipment, but taking it very easy. Recording sets whenever I get the chance. If I don't have the chance, not like, you know, as it was before, that I have to do this, I have to do that. For myself, when I have a gig, then I always try to act as professional as possible, because I believe I understand this business very well, and what is requested from us. I take it very seriously, but at the same time, I took it like really, really easy.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about Alzheimer's. Now, when we were discussing about possibly you coming on the show, you mentioned that your mother sadly has Alzheimer's, but you use music to help her. So tell us a little bit about that. When was she first diagnosed, and when did you first start using music?
She was first diagnosed right after my first son was born, and that's when my dad, she came to the delivery to China, because we were in Shanghai. She came over, and then my dad was telling me, observe your mom, because I think something's going on. And then we started suspecting, and then I confirmed to my dad, like, yeah, I think we need to go and check this out. So it was diagnosed 10 years ago. That was 2019. She was 59 at the time, so very young. It's been 10, almost 11 years. Going back to the health and the music and so on, you know, I think it's when you, or in my case, when you have a very clear connection to your parents in terms of music, like I love the music my dad played, and that was my childhood, listening to that music and all the music, Spanish music that my mom likes. My mom always used to, when she was a child, she always tells us, like, I used to sing in bars, and everybody was telling me, like, hey, shut up, you sing too much, you talk too much. And she loved to sing and so on. So that builds a connection. For us, it was really, or for me, it was very easy to identify that that could help. Music could help because the connection was already there. It was something that also connected the family. Now, Alzheimer is living on a constant paranoia. Paranoia is everything is paranoid. Like you forget something at some point and you question yourself, do I have this also? Like my dad, as the main caretaker of her, is the same. Like he's always saying, like, what I'm getting also, like, really, it's like it's normal. You live on a nonsense. You doubt of yourself, and you put yourself, and you worry about yourself too. And then it's like, and sometimes it's more like you have no focus, or like I think inside them, like this sort of parallel world where things do not make sense or they're not connected. So the music is an anchor to the real one, and it's something that would put calm or establish a connection with that particular moment, or that could avoid, because you could detect, like, when somebody woke up in the morning and they're not having a good day in terms of, they make more mistakes, or they're more clumsy, or they're more insecure. So you can identify from the moment they wake up in the morning, and you could also use some music to start the morning, or it's just, as I said, I believe, because I have no idea about it. I'm not a doctor, but it's just my experience with my mom. I believe that connects her to the real world. She's not really lost. Like, you could talk to her and you can have a 3-minute conversation. She's perfectly, like, many people say, like, oh, she looks really good, she talks really good, she's very sociable and so on. But after the 3 minutes, you go back to square one. It's like Groundhog Day, the movie, right?
Yeah.
So you live on a buffer, or a loop of 3 minutes. If you would stay all the time talking and following and having patience, some days you are more patient, some days you are less patient, you have other things going on, work and so on. But I think music helps on that, bring them to reality. Music, of course, has to be music that they know the lyrics, music they would listen to when they were young. This music therapy, there's a lot of music therapists that are working on Alzheimer's now, and I have a colleague where I studied with in Madrid when we studied music production, and he did a project. He's on a project for music therapy for Alzheimer's also, and sometimes we talk about it and share experiences. But that's pretty much it. I think music is done with a mood, to project a mood and to project feelings, and it's done from feelings to provoke feelings.
In terms of the music, then, are you playing records, or are you playing digital? What are you playing to your mum?
Whatever I have at hand. Normally, if I have a record, I like, because it's a process. The longer you make the process, the better. But for example, some songs were from when she was a kid. I don't have it on record. It's impossible.
Yeah.
Some songs that we could listen when I was a kid, but she would remember the lyrics. Some of them I can have. Some of them I have. Some of them are my dad records, so I can go on those. I found out that the ones who work better are the ones that she can sing. That's older, and then it's Spanish because she wouldn't speak. She doesn't understand the lyrics in English, and has to be a very specific music that worked for her. But it was easy to identify.
And so this is, a lot of the music is from her childhood in Spanish that she would have sung as a child, and obviously she's now singing again as an older
Or
person.
when she was younger, or even music before she had Alzheimer. But as we grow old ourselves too, like, we tend to listen what we used to listen before. If you're not a DJ and you don't need to dig into records and you don't need to explore more and so on, we always go back. The other day I was listening to music that the kids are listening nowadays, like, I have no idea about any of the artists. I don't know any of them. Like 11-year-old kids, 9, 12. They were telling me, you know this and you know that, and I have no idea. I've never listened to it. I never heard of them. Unbelievable. It happens to us. It happened to my mom. I mean, they did that music. You know, you tend to listen to the same music, or to your favorite music is your all-time, brings you back memories and so on.
Have you noticed that there has been a change over time from when you first started doing this?
I mean, the music purpose is to have a particular period of time, that time to have a better feeling. I mean, there is no evolution on Alzheimer's. Like, Alzheimer's is unstoppable. But you could manipulate a little bit the mood of a bad day. That's the purpose. The purpose is to obtain the most or the best possible quality time, whatever. And the next day we start from zero. We start again. There is no, or 3 hours later. Or in my case, when you see that it's gonna have a bad day in terms of, you know, I don't know if you have any relatives or you've known Alzheimer from close, but anybody who knows is, you know, it's like a battle every 3 minutes. Just start again and start over and over and over. So you just use it for a specific period of time or a part of the day where you see that the things is shifting into that bad or getting worse, or them being more sad or being more aggressive or being more defensive because they think that you don't let them do things because you may be thinking that they are stupid or something. I think that's what it goes on their mind. But then, of course, you cannot allow them to do certain things that you know is going to be bad for them. But they think on the present as if they were non-Alzheimer patients. So it's very it's very tricky, that mind. So you just use it to manipulate and state of feelings.
Now, obviously, you're using music to help your mother, but how is this impacting you? And your mental health? Are you thinking that maybe one day you might end up having Alzheimer's?
It is a possibility, and I prefer to think in that way. That saying that it will never happen to me. But the way it affects you, of course, is worry in terms of them suffering. I'm an only child, and then my dad is the one living in Madrid with her, and I help them as much as I can. For example, they just left this morning. They come to my place between 10 days and 15 days every 4 weeks. So I could say that I see them more often than many other people sees their parents.
Yeah.
And we stay under the same roof because I want them to enjoy the kids. That's something that also helps. Talking about yourself and then how it affects me, it worries you. And then sometimes whenever you forget something or you made a mistake, the first thing that comes to your mind is like, am I having this because I can have Alzheimer in the future? So there's always this doubt. And then you doubt yourself, even you make small mistakes. But that's how it starts. So you don't know whether you're starting or not. And then you talk to professionals and they will tell you that that's perfectly normal. Like, before knowing Alzheimer, you would think like, oh man, I just, I'm stupid. And then, but now that you know Alzheimer, the first thing that comes to your mind is like, do I have this or will I have this? But then the professional tells you it's very normal to do that assumption or that relationship, that you don't need to worry about it.
Yeah. I guess it'll be interesting in the future to see if you end up having the same diagnosis, whether your children will then play music back to you, maybe having witnessed you do that for your mother. Do you think that's something that they may take on in the future?
They may inherit the techniques, the records, so I hope they do. They're very aware of what's going on with the grandma, so I think they would do it.
That's really great to hear. And obviously music therapy is something that we talk about a lot on this show. The 45 Kids Project sponsors and helps Jesse's Fund, which is a music therapy charity for children who can't communicate normally. So yeah, it's great to see that music is so powerful, and it's something that a lot of us will probably endure with our parents possibly getting Alzheimer's, and it's good to have some coping mechanism or something that we might be able to do, something that we enjoy that we can share with our parents. Yeah. on this show, on the very first show we did back in March 2021, Mark Lancaster was in the chat and he asked my guests, who was Double P and Mr. Musto, what 45s lift their spirits. And so I've asked it every time since on the show. And we also have an uplifting day, 45-day mix, where people do 45 minutes of 45s that lift their spirits. But I asked you to bring 3 along. So let's have a look at each one in turn, and you can tell me why you've chosen it and why it lifts your spirits.
I would have chosen more, of course, because it's very difficult to leave everything behind. But this is one of my dad's favorite songs from the album. This is Neil Diamond, Cherry Cherry. It's like really rocker song, that one in particular. And from the album Hot August Night, which was a live concert, then start with classical music, and then it fades into this super powerful rock song. It's just remind me of my dad, and I enjoyed this song with him a lot.
Is that his record, or is that a record that you've bought?
I bought
it later, yeah.
I got the big album, the
okay.
LP Live from him, and he's always blaming me from taking all his records. Like, where are my records? It's like, I've got them. You need to come to Malaga. Then we stay together here and we listen to them. Another one that I love and I used to love when I was a kid, Tina Turner. So I chose this, which is the Proud Mary one.
Great record.
Why I love this song, and I loved Tina Turner because when I was a kid I was like impressed by the power, and she was just like pure energy, amazing force of nature. But Proud Mary gets me into another one of my favorite bands, and then just to not to choose one, but I could choose the Proud Mary. It got the CCR all singles, Creedence Clearwater Revival. So I would say Proud Mary, Fortnite Song, any of these would lift my spirit.
Amazing. Okay, and they lift your spirits for different reasons, which is great. The fact, obviously, your father's, the memories from there, and it goes from
childhood memories, family. I believe they are quality.
yeah, they are great. So, what projects are you working on at the moment, or what do you have musically going on?
Trying to start like a community here in Malaga and start making some sort of promoting a few parties with everyone who would be interested, because the scene in the center all for this kind of music and the one I do, but I'm open to collaborate with anyone. Started doing one, it went really well. I don't know, in Spain I feel like I miss the connection between DJs and collaboration, to be honest. The way that I've seen it abroad. I would say here is more protectionist, you get your little parcel or your niche or whatever, and it's very hermetic. Whereas I never found it anywhere else. Maybe it's because, when you are, they say nobody's a prophet in their own land. So it could be that. It could be that. Maybe I'm wrong, and it's a big possibility, as always. But I don't know. I just talking to people now and trying to go out and play. We got like old battery-powered gear. You could go with batteries and play in a park. Speaker, Bluetooth speaker, this cord, handy track for 45 player, which you can go run on batteries, mixer, and so we're just trying to do things in the city.
And it's great that it's creative. You're doing something different, like you say, because of the advances in technology with being able to take this almost portable. It's great to be able to take that vibe anywhere. So tell us, obviously, Malaga. Tell me a little bit about the record shops, if there are any, and also tell me about the other parties that are going on. Is there many vinyl like listening bars or anything like that over there?
I am missing vinyl listening bars. There is a couple of them that they have, but the system is not a hi-fi bar or listening bar. It's a bar that they are, which is a start, but they are, trying to get people to play on vinyl and do stuff, but sound system is not, and equipment is, not great, but it's a start. I think The city is starting. We are, in my opinion, a little bit late, but there is some guys that are doing great. Also bringing the vinyl community together here in Malaga, trying to cooperate with them. We did a party together, and it went great, and they're great people. One of them is a UK guy also. But yeah, we're just trying to get the thing rolling. Now, it's not for the benefit of one. I don't know, for example, what I learned in China, when the mentality is that you will have a street full of Chinese restaurants. So it's Chinatown or the Chinese street. So and you don't always go to the same place. Why they do that? Because they generate that traction from the street, so everybody benefits. Whereas, for example, in Spain, there's a culture like I have a bar here, I have my customers. Why would you open a bar in front of me? And that's seen, as a competition, bad competition. And more from the other one. The more traction we generate on vinyl, the more people gets individually. Don't need to cooperate with me, but the more things are happening and going on is on benefit of everybody. So that's what we're trying to lift here. But there is great people here, great DJs doing stuff. But I think it's a little bit hermetic yet.
It's what I've done. You build a community, you work together. Each one helps each other. And you never know when opportunities are going to come about. But also, if you do work together, you build together. If you're just one person and you're just, I'm not going to collaborate with anyone, I'm going to do my own thing. You might get somewhere, but you're going to have more fun for a start, but also have more opportunities if you work with other people and together.
Yeah, you need to generate the traction. You need to generate the need. People needs to be banned because they have seen it, they enjoyed it, they like it, and they want to have it again. So they will ask bars, will you have DJs? Do you have live bands? Do you have? But if there is, they need to see it before working. That's what we're trying to do. But I'm not the only one here. There's many people trying, but I think we need to do more on a collaborative way.
It's been great. It's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot, and especially in terms of dealing with your mother's Alzheimer's, that's really, really interesting to find out more about. And I'm sure lots of people will be interested to find that out and see if they can implement it themselves if they need to. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being open and honest, telling me all about what's been going on in your family and your life. It's been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
I had a really good time. Thank you very much for having me.